She just sort of nudges it, you know, with her foot and says,
"What seems to be the trouble, Captain?"
Oh, him. That's my husband.
I thought he was a rabbit or a pheasant or something.
I hit him over the head with a milk bottle and knocked him silly.
I killed Harry Warp.
By rights, you should mail him back home.
Put him in a glass case.
Bury him, I say, and I'm done with him.
All that digging and work.
Frankly, I don't care what you do with Harry, just as long as you don't bring him back to life.
We're not quite finished with him yet.
I'm a man who's faced death many times.
Rather recently, too.
Let's get Harry someplace and clean him up.
Now, you haven't dug him up again.
What's he doing in our bathtub? You just keep quiet about all this.
I've made up my mind.
I'll dig him up.
I'll get my shovel.
At the time that I accepted the offer from Hitch, I was second-year director on To Catch a Thief in the south of France. And when we got back to the studio and working in the studio, he gave me a book to read called The Trouble with Harry.
It was an English book, as I recall. And he had picked it up either on a trip or somebody sent it to him, but he kept it and always wanted to do it.
So I read the book, and I thought it was a very funny thing, and I thought we should do it. And so we made a deal that I would produce the picture, but my title on the screen would be associate producer.
He wanted to make The Trouble with Harry, and Paramount was not all that delighted with his decision. But it was something he wanted to do, and he had been very good to Paramount, so they said, all right, they'd let him do it, knowing that it wasn't going to be a typical Hitchcock picture or even a major picture.
I think it was an effort for him to break away from the whole, what people expected Hitchcock to be, and for him to come out with a comedy based on digging up a body and pulling it out.
It was a story about a corpse, yes. The trouble with Harry was that he was dead, and they couldn't get rid of him. That's what they called dark humor, black comedy, but it was not offensive.
It was a nice piece of work. It was very clean and very funny. And unlike the usual things that Hitchcock is associated with, for example, there were no great sexy scenes. Shirley MacLaine and I had a thing about getting married and getting a double bed.
That's very practical.
Other than that, there was nothing really sexy about the movie, unlike a lot of Hitchcock's movies, which were very, very sexy.
Hitch was an enigma, personally as well as professionally. He never once congratulated me or thanked me for anything I did well. I think he had the philosophy that if you do well, that's what's expected of you. That's what he pays you for. If you don't do well, then he criticizes you.
Hitchcock worked very closely with the writers on this because this was a trick for him.
Doesn't live around here.
Well, he died around here. That's what counts now.
Embarrassing.
For him to get involved with a comedy of this kind, the kooky kind of English comedy, was something rare.
Harry, thank Providence, the last of Harry.
Who's Providence, Mommy?
A very good friend.
Now, he neither complimented me nor criticized me. He just was neutral. Early on my relationship with him, I didn't know whether he liked things or not when I sent them to him. And his wife came up to me one time and said, "Don't ever breathe a word of this to Hitch, but he's immensely pleased with you." He didn't want to tell me. His wife, Alma, was pure sunshine. She was brilliant to begin with. She advised him on scripts. She advised him what to read. She looked at the first cuts of the films and made suggestions. She kept his balance, in the balance of everyone, with good humor, thoughtfulness, and just sheer niceness. I'm very fond of Alma. Always have been.
We went back to New York to complete the casting on the picture because nobody had been able to find anyone for the part of Jennifer. And when I got to New York, my daughter had been telling me about a play in New York called A Pajama Game and kept insisting that I go and see it. And Shirley MacLaine was an understudy for Carol Haney the afternoon that we went to see it, but I thought it was Carol Haney. When the show was over, I said to Doc Erickson, the production manager, Carol Haney is ideal for Jennifer. And Doc said, but that wasn't Carol Haney. It was a girl called Shirley MacLaine. And I'd made arrangements for the Paramount office to pick her up and bring her to the St. Regis Hotel to meet Hitch and I on a certain morning. And that day we were in Hitch's suite working on the screenplay. The doorbell rang, and I opened the door, and there stood the most bedraggled figure I'd ever seen. It was Shirley MacLaine. She had no hat on her head. The rain was pouring off of her hair, down her face. She had a trench coat on. The collar was covered with makeup, and it was open in front, and she had a brown, worn sweater and a skirt also well worn. I looked down at her feet, and she had on sandals with no socks, and she was really a bedraggled figure. I said, for goodness sakes, come in here. I said, what happened to you? How'd you get so wet? She said, well, I had to walk from the bus. I said, but didn't the car pick you up? She says, no. So I called to Alma. I said, Alma, come and take this girl in there and give her something she could wear. So Alma came and took her in his bedroom and took those wet clothes off and gave her a robe to wear and called the people to come up and take her clothes down and dry them out for her. And that's the way we had the first interview with Shirley MacLaine.
How he had found me, and he said, it was easy. I saw you on the stage. And I said, well, what did you think? He said, well, I put you in my movie, didn't I? And I said, thank you for that. He saw me in Tea House of the August Moon, which was a Pulitzer Prize winning play. And he said, meet me at Sardi's, which is the big luncheon place in New York where all the theater people went. So I went to Sardi's, and he said, oh, he said, you're taller than you looked on the stage. Yes, sir. I said, so are you. He laughed. He said, that's a good answer. Yes. Then we talked for a while, and he said, there's one thing I can't stand, he said. And I said, what's that? He said, we have to watch out the way you're dressed. He said, you dress like an Ivy Leaguer. You dress like you went to school at Yale. We mustn't ever have shoes with brown and white or black and white. And he looked down under the table at my man. And fortunately, I didn't have two-tone shoes. Because I think he would not have hired me if he had seen the two-tone shoes that sometimes I wore. But he was a glorious guy, and I enjoyed him immensely.
Alfred Hitchcock thought we could do The Trouble with Harry, which was based in England, in New England. We went to Vermont.
One of the reasons he wanted to shoot it in Vermont was to bring a little lightness into it by using the colors, because it was a pretty grim story, except it was and it wasn't, because the humor of it was so great that, you know, you really couldn't take it seriously.
We settled on some place where we could find the beautiful fall colors. I finally found a place that was ideal to build a little store where John Forsythe would show his paintings. There was only about 3 houses in this whole little town. It was on.
There were about 4 or 5 cloudy days in a row, and we couldn't shoot. So what we did was we sat around and watched, and Hitchcock would sit in his chair and look at the sky, keep looking at the sky. Pretty soon he would say, come here, John, sit down, we'll talk. It's very dull, it's boring, sit down. So I would sit and I'd talk to him, make jokes with him, and we would pass the time of day.
When we made Trouble with Harry, it was a totally different experience from making Rear Window. We had, with Rear Window, an inside controlled set. It was very manageable, it never got away from us. In The Trouble with Harry, we arrived in Vermont, at Stowe, Vermont, took some plates of the fall foliage, which was unbelievably pretty, and then a storm hit us, and it stripped all the trees, and we had no leaves.
So what he had to do, we had to pack up the whole show and move it to Paramount, to the studios in Hollywood. What they did was they built very big coffin-like things, and they threw the leaves into them, and when we went to Paramount Studios in Hollywood, they shipped these coffin-like containers out. And what they would do is they would take the leaves out of the containers and pin them onto the trees, and then spray them different colors. That was Hitchcock's idea. Let's move on. Let's spray the damned leaves. Move on.
We brought the leaves back from Vermont, pasted them on the trees, and built a false hillside so that principally the scene where Harry is found dead and subsequently buried, let's say in Los Angeles and half in Vermont, and we all would preferred Vermont full time because it was more lush. And we had a lot of outtakes, and later on, when I did a picture called Peyton Place, they were looking for fall pictures. They wouldn't let us shoot Peyton Place in Vermont. We shot it in Maine, but they borrowed the fall shots from The Trouble with Harry at the 20th Century Fox to put it in. Vermont, which wouldn't let us film there, later in the Vermont magazine boasted that they couldn't make Peyton Place without Vermont.
Come and see the dailies. You'll like them. And I said, well, I don't think so. He said, why? And I said, well, I'm a little nervous. Oh, John, he said, don't be foolish now. It's only a movie. And after all, we're all grossly overpaid. Wonderful, wonderful line.
I can't see why you're all making such a fuss about Harry. If he was buried, I don't see why you had to dig him up. But since you have, I guess you'd better do what you think best. Frankly, I don't care what you do with Harry, just as long as you don't bring him back to life.
Shirley turned out to be an exceptional actress. And Hitchcock said, all my doing, I made her into an actress. And I'd say, yes, of course you did. Sure, sure. And you'd say, yes, I did. Looking down at me on the stool that I was forced to sit on all the time. But it's untrue that he didn't like actors.
Well,
in the choosing of Shirley MacLaine, it was a marvelous thing. She's that kind of girl. She's so kooky and strange and funny, or was at that point. She's now graduated into other things. But she kept the humor up. I tried very hard to keep it up.
He wants to buy your pictures, Mr. Marlowe.
Which pictures?
All of them, and more besides. He says you're a genius.
Well, he's right.
Hitchcock himself would insert things. He'd shoot a scene and say, that's very good, but let's try it this way. And he would throw everything out, and we try it another way. You have to have good actors to do that. And Edmund Gwenn was a marvelous actor, and Mildred Natwick, and Shirley, even Morel Dano.
When Philip Truex was ordered to come up to the location, he and my wife Maribel were on the same plane, and they proceeded together. And there he discovered that Maribel was my wife, and Maribel discovered that he was going to play the part of the dead body. He played the part of the dead body very well, by the way.
Here he comes.
One of the main things about it was the score, which was so beautiful. And it was the first time my father had worked with Bernard Herrmann. I think that added tremendously to the picture, and I think that's why he needed somebody as good as Herrmann to do this.
Go on, Arnie, run home and tell me about it.
Don't touch him.
Please, Arnie, run home and tell your mother.
Beat it, you little creep. I mean, hurry home, son.
There was a very funny scene in the picture where the captain was walking home, and he had
the tone of the movie, the tone of the score, and it even is something of a musical portrait of its director. In fact, Bernard Herrmann so identified this particular film score with Hitchcock that he later arranged the various themes into a suite, a concert suite, that he called A Portrait of Hitch, and he dedicated it to Alfred Hitchcock. Bernard Herrmann recorded the music for The Trouble with Harry at Paramount, and apparently this was the first time he had worked at Paramount. His friend Lynn Murray had worked there on many occasions, and he tried to prepare everyone for a good session and told the orchestra how much they'd like Bernard Herrmann. He told Herrmann that these are a bunch of great guys, you'll have a great time working together. Well, that's not what happened. Herrmann was temperamental, he was explosive, and he was particularly explosive if he felt that musicianship was not up to what he expected. And he had been spoiled by working at 20th Century Fox for many years, where the musicianship was really the best of anywhere in Hollywood. He came to Paramount and immediately started berating the orchestra. He was evidently very hard on the oboist, who had a lot of important solos in the score. And pretty soon, everybody despised him. He had a miserable time with them, and the work got done, but it was not a happy experience. The Trouble with Harry marked the beginning of the most important creative association in his career, that with Alfred Hitchcock. Herrmann knew exactly what Hitchcock was trying to achieve, not just on a basic plot level. He didn't just decorate the music, decorate the film with his music the way I think some composers did. And I think that's why Hitchcock immediately realized that he had found the collaborator that he wanted to continue working with.
Let's go.
Just a minute, ma'am. I want to ask Sam something.
Went in to see that thinking they were going to see a Hitchcock movie, suspense, etc., etc. And it wasn't. It was a comedy, even though it was a dark comedy.
Hitch was well aware, after making The Trouble with Harry, that he didn't give the audience exactly what they expected. Yet he liked that subtle sense of humor, and he was bound to do it.
Digging up a dead body and pulling it around, taking it different places, is not considered funny except by the British and some of the Europeans. But in the United States, death is not considered funny.
When it was issued first in this country, it didn't do well. It went to Europe. In some places, it played a solid year at theaters in London and in Rome.
In France, it ran for about a year and a half on the Champs-Élysées. It was a big, big hit.
And when they brought it back here, it paid off.
Trouble with Harry had a great influence on Alfred Hitchcock Presents because he was able to join the humor and a pretty grim story.
Tonight's legend tells of modern life and how to solve a problem. Wife.
Even if the stories were very macabre,
Hurry, get the doctor, please!
he realized that the humor of it at the end was really necessary, you know, I think, to bring a little lightness into it.
For failing to call a doctor when his friend was bitten, Harry spent some little time in prison. Apparently the snake couldn't keep his mouth shut.
And then it was fun for him to make fun of it, too, at the end, in his beginnings and the endings.
No bullet, shriek, or livid gash, no stains, no fumes, no ugly splatter. We use only the purest subject matter. Good night.
Well, I enjoyed the movie very much. I thought it was a very funny movie. And it accomplished exactly what Hitch was after to get. It wasn't successful at first, and mainly because the New York office talked Hitch out of having the big publicity and all the tours for the picture. And so it took an awful long time to make its money back. Eventually it became a minor success.
When I first saw Hitchcock, I thought I was in the presence of genius. After I worked with him for a while, I thought he was a good movie maker. As I neared the end of my relationship with him, I was back to the genius again, because there were more subtleties about him that took me a while to grasp.
He was one of the outstanding elements in the motion picture industry, and he was a great, great director, a man who was able to move in any direction, in comedy, in the kind of illuminating, wonderful mystery, and also the romantic, too.
All right. You got your...
Harry's been buried and dug up on and off all day long. Well, we just decided to clean him up and put him back where we found him.
Heaven's will is done, and destiny fulfilled.
The end.